Thank you everyone for coming. I know I'm the last one. I'm between you and the expo and the happy hour, of course. So thank you for coming to my session. We will talk about privacy first, generative AI applications, setting up guardrails for compliance. I have a question. How many of you are using conversational interfaces to talk with the AI? Can you raise your hand? All right, most of them. Of course. How many of you ask some questions about, like, I have a contract. Can you tell me something about this contract, how it affects me? All right. How many of you ask questions like, this is the results of my blood test. Can you do me a resume before I go to the medic? All right. Some people do that, you know? But what about, imagine if you wake up in the morning and you realize your private data has been leaked by a AI application that doesn't implement some guardrails to protect your information to be public, you know? Many of you probably have interacted with tools like ChatGPT or models that are coming from Llama or different platforms, but you don't know what the application is doing behind to protect your information. So that's important to start to talk about data protection in GenAI applications. We are in the middle of a change where the applications are changing the way that they interact with the users. We are changing from graphical interfaces into conversational interfaces. So the other ones have a lot of time of evolving to protect your information. But this is something new. 4 or 5 years ago, we didn't talk about generative AI. The conversation was different. So we need to start to talk about the ethics of the AI. So the agenda today, we will talk about responsible AI, how we can protect the user's information, which one is the appropriate technology that we can use on AWS to protect the information. I will give you a small introduction to Macy, which is a tool that we can use to classify data at scale before sending the data to train models. And also, we will focus more on a Bedrock to implement guardrails to protect information that we are getting from the user to store from different places or send it to models, and the response from the model to send it to the user. First of all, let's talk about a little bit of AI ethics. Many decisions today are being used AI to classify information for people. An example, credit scoring, or setting up if you are approved or not for a loan. What about if you can get, into a class for your kids, if you are approved for that. Some places are starting to use AI to evaluate those things because they want to be more productive on the users to, it's more easy to train a model than a person. So things like that are happening today, and we need to focus on build an AI that can be, built to protect the users. So we have a few few words that we can use as a dimension for responsible AI. Fairness, to consider the impact of different groups of stakeholders or people related with the AI. Explainability, to understand and evaluate the output of the systems. Privacy and security, to obtain and use the data that the users are providing and protecting the data from the models. Safetiness, to prevent harmful systems output that can make, bad decisions on the people. Controllability, to have mechanisms to monitor the AI and make changes to protect the people. veracity and robustness to prevent the hallucinations of the AI gets into the people, governance to incorporate the best practices of the AI in the supply chains, including providers where we deploy the applications, transparency to enable us to stakeholders to understand how the models and the applications are working in order to take appropriate decisions with the information that is provided by the AI. So this is just an introduction. I encourage you to start to learn a little bit more about the responsible AI. But let's talk a little bit more about technology. AWS offers a good set of tools to establish responsible AI. I have a word here that was made by the former CEO of AWS. But basically, what he said is to AI have the power to. The power is a powerful tool that it's important to develop a user-responsible way. And AWS is committed to provide tools and guidance to implement it that way. So, first, I want to mention about Macy. Macy is a tool that allows you to automate data classification for sensitive data at scale. It's cost-effective and allows you to discover sensitive data that is stored on S3. You can enable it easily and detect the information that you have in your account, your S3 buckets, and understand if you have PAI, credit card information on your buckets, and establish some techniques to evaluate and prevent that data gets into your model if you are refining or training new models. And helps you to reduce the triage time when you are trying to understand if you are sending protected information into the training process. Well, I encourage you, my call to action is in these 3 steps, you can start to classify data with Macy. First, go to the Macy console on your AWS console. Click on Get Started. Then enable Macy. It will create a role for you, and then you can start to use it and get information about the buckets that are contained in your account and start to do your investigation. Of course, there is more features, but this is a call for action to you to start to use it. It's very, very easy to kick off with Macy. Next tool that I want to mention is Bedrock. Amazon Bedrock, probably some of you are hear a lot about the AI with Amazon Bedrock in AWS, and the previous session was how to build a secure application on Bedrock. But basically, Amazon Bedrock provides you a comprehensive layer to implement models, a foundational model into your applications in a single API that you can add customization. Also, you can create retrieval augmentation generation applications. It provides agent features that you can integrate multiple tasks and improve the way that your application is working. Contains security and privacy safety that you can implement your application to protect the user's information, and provides management interface that you can use for your applications, generative applications. Well, let's talk about the Bedrock guardrails. That's the main topic of my talk. This code it was created with Amazon with the cloud, Anthropic's Cloud Sonnet 3.5. Thinking into the guardrails as something that is an internal ethical guide for our AI applications, ensuring that the applications that we are building are safety, and also you don't notice about, but are there. There is 2 things that are trying to, you can implement, sorry, the models are containing their own guardrails, but also Bedrock provides you some guardrails that you can use to improve the security of your applications. So this slide contains information about the different 6 the 6 steps that provides you to protect your information on the guardrail. It can help you to filter and adjust the thresholds. Can help you to protect identity, define and disallow denied topics to prevent to use the people to use in different the way that you intended to build the application. Removes PII and credit card information or sensible information, and you can define set of works that you can prevent to be used in your applications. And of course, the most important part, you can filter hallucinations that are coming from the model to prevent those hallucinations get into the user as real information. So this slide explains how is the steps when you get. We will start to suppose an example application where the user gets an input as a prompting, then the prompt goes to Amazon Bedrock as an input. It will be evaluated at the LLM guardrail and will send it into the LLM to get the request processor, and then the answer from the LLM will go also to the guardrails, and finally, the response goes to the user at the end. So, in this case, we can filter information about the different techniques for intrusion defense, prompting, post-prompting, random sequences to enclosure, sandwich defense, XML tagging, etc. And then Bedrock will apply the filters on the guardrail, and you get the response from the LLM, and it will be evaluated again. All right. Oh, looks like it, yeah. Sorry about that. I didn't realize my slide still have some words in Spanish, but this is how the Bedrock explained. I'm a Spanish speaker. I'm from Argentina. That's why I'm a little bit nervous about my pronunciation. But well, this is how Bedrock do the independent evaluations about the user. We can use the same independent evaluations also for the user and from the foundational model output. And then this is the different. Here's denial topics, content filter, filter of information, confidential information, context grounding, and then the words that are not allowed. And then, after that, you get the response. So in this slide, you can see an example how can be implemented in an application where you have the front end built on Amplify with CloudFront, S3 for static access, and Cognito for the user authentication. And the front end that's built on that. It will interact with the API gateway to send to the backend application that is hosted on Lambda. Lambda will capture the prompting, and then it will interact with the Amazon Bedrock. So when you get a message, it will interact in this way. We'll send, like we reviewed minutes ago. And this is the important part that you have to take attention. It's very, very easy to set up the guardrails. When you go to the Amazon Bedrock console, there is a place that is for guardrails, and then you set the content filters in this way. The content filters you can filter hate, insults, sexual topics, violence, misconduct, and prompting attack. And you can set it for text, and some of them for images as well. And then for each of the topics, you will have a strength that you can change easy way as a slider. So you can say how is the level of strength to apply into those topics. Same for prompting attack. You can prevent the people to start to try to apply prompting techniques to get information that is not allowed, and also harmful categories that you don't want to touch, and to prevent and protect the people to to get private information or efforts to get information that is not related with the topic of the application. You can add some denied topics. You can say, I don't want my application to talk about politics. I don't want my application to talk about, I know, maybe provide medical advising. Since it's not a medical application. So you can add your own topics and you can point your prompting definition about the topic that you don't want to apply in your application. Contextual grounding and relevance evaluates if the topic that you are putting in as your input is related, and of course it has two different points. Relevance and threshold. It will evaluate if the grounding of your request is related with the application, and then it will evaluate also the response of the LLM, and it is related with the grounding of the application. Sorry. And finally, this is one of the most important, the PAI filter. This will allow you to detect, filter, and masquerade, block, PII information. When a user put inside of the prompting or interaction with the LLM, I don't know, social security number, license, driver license, or credit card information or something like that, you have a lot of entries that are already made that you can block, detect, or masquerade in your application in an easy way. There is some collections that are built in, and otherwise you can use regular expressions to add more filters that are not built in. Also, you can add a filter for profanity on words, and also you can add a list of words that you can upload in a file. It can be a list of words that can be a CSV file or just text. So you can filter topics that you wouldn't want to include on your application. Another important thing on Amazon Bedrock guardrails is how we are monitoring the guardrails to make decisions about how we are building the application and how it's performing. So Amazon Bedrock provides you auditing and logging that you can evaluate the executions. It's integrated with CloudTrail, so you can get it there. It's in JSON format. You can get information about what's the guardrail that was triggered, what was the confidence on that guardrail, and if it was blocked or was detected only. So you can make decisions on how to change your application to detect more things. Also, you can build a dashboard where you can identify patterns and potential issues that are happening on your application. Had to be fast because we are running out of time, but these are the benefits of implementing guardrails on your GenAI applications. You can block up to 85% more of harmful content that are coming than a natural protection on your foundational models. You can filter hallucinations in your RAG applications and work with all of the LLMs that are included on Amazon Bedrock. You don't have to implement something else. Helps you to meet industry standards like GDPR, like ISO, and builds confidence in your application for the people. You know, the people doesn't trust so much in the GenAI application sometimes because many people well, we know there is some stories of some providers that trains with the models with the social media data. So probably if you ask some questions about you, probably you will find in some of the models. So you have to filter those to not get into the final users. So that's an important topic. To wrap up this session, I will leave some QR codes that you can scan for our links to documentation about the the website of Bedrock Guardrails, a guide to implement Bedrock Guardrails, and a blog post, how to create a generative AI application, interact with Slack and Bedrock, and finally, some sample code for Bedrock Guardrails. Thank you very much for coming here. So you can go now to the expo, or if you want to have some questions, I will be in the side of the stage. Here's my contact information. Thank you.